If I could love again, I would do it differently. I used to think love was something that came naturally, like a lightning bolt. You can't control it, can't create it, you just receive it when it happens. I lived as if love were a reward, something beyond my control, and I was just lucky to receive it. But over time, I realized that love isn't something you receive, it's something you must become. Love doesn't exist in the superficial or empty promises. It's not just grand gestures, gifts, or long trips. I could take you to the moon if technology allowed, but that wouldn't prove I love you the right way. Those things are just surface level performances I put on to hide the emptiness inside. Yes, I've done impressive things, but I never truly stayed in the tough moments. I never learned to sit with and face the emotions, the insecurities that real love demands. I tried to please you with actions, but forgot one crucial thing. Love requires presence, honesty in the simplest moments. I didn't understand that love doesn't need monuments or grand feats. It needs patience, softness, and sometimes silence. I didn't know how to love that way. Over the years, I lived in a world of movement, of busyness, where I could control everything. But love isn't something that can be controlled. It's not a problem that can be solved over time. And I complicated it because I didn't understand what I was really lacking. I wasted so much time trying to prove myself. I didn't realize that love doesn't ask you to be strong, but to be someone who listens, who stays in moments of weakness. I didn't know how to accept my own vulnerability, and I didn't understand that it's this acceptance that's at the core of love. When I kept hiding my heart behind the shield of logic, I created a distance. I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality, I was pushing love further away. If I could love again, I wouldn't hide myself anymore. I wouldn't keep running away from the emotions that aren't easy to handle, wouldn't keep using reason to guard my heart. I wouldn't live in a world where control and performance are the deciding factors. Love doesn't need that. It needs presence, the willingness to accept imperfect moments. And I believe that if I could love again, I wouldn't do it the old way. I would give all of myself, not just what I've built, but my true self, the person who can feel, who can love without fear. I made love difficult because I didn't know how to stay. To me, love wasn't about settling. It was always a battle with myself, a struggle to control everything around me. I could do great things, make seemingly impossible projects come to life, but when faced with love, I didn't know how to face myself. I didn't know how to stay in imperfect moments. I couldn't sit still in a space filled with emotions without feeling the need to do something to fix something. I've realized that this is not how love truly exists. Love is not a problem that can be solved. It's not an event that can be predicted. For a long time, I lived in a world of performance and action, where everything had to have clear results. But love isn't like that. It doesn't need great accomplishments to prove its authenticity. Love only needs presence, the patience to stay through tough moments when emotions become unfamiliar. That's something I didn't know how to do, and it's what made my relationship slip away. I thought that if I could provide everything, do everything right, build everything around me, love would automatically flourish. But the reality was different. Love isn't something that can be measured by what I've built or what I can give. Love needs connection, sincerity, and above all, the ability to stay. It's a commitment not through grand actions, but in small moments, when you simply sit quietly and listen. That's what I didn't do because I thought only actions could prove love. I was wrong. Love doesn't need the protection of reason, nor does it need control over everything. Love is not a project you can plan in detail. It's an emotion, a state you must feel and live with. But I've always been afraid that if I didn't do something, if I couldn't control the situation, I'd lose something precious. This fear made me miss many opportunities to truly connect with the person I loved. If I could love again, I wouldn't let myself run away from emotions. I wouldn't let worry about the future or the need to control dominate me. Love isn't something you can control your way. It's something you must accept and live with. It requires patience and commitment to stay through tough moments when things don't go as you want. If I could love again, I would learn to stay not just with the person I love, but also with my own feelings. I love in the only way I know, through movement. To me, love has always been a process of momentum, specific actions I can take, projects I can build, outcomes I can prove. I thought that, like everything else in life, love needed momentum, it needed results. If I could work hard, endure difficulties, and bring about great things, then that was how I would show my love. I've spent my life creating systems, technologies, and I thought that love was also a system that needed to be built, something that required a plan, but I was wrong. Love is not a product of performance or achievement. It is not something that can be measured by what you create. I thought that if I could build a successful company, create a groundbreaking product, or do something great, then that would automatically prove my love. But love is not a formula. It's not something that can be built based on measurable factors. True love is simply presence, sharing, and connection. I loved through grand gestures. I expressed love through big actions, long trips, and grand gifts. But in the process, I forgot the most important thing. Love is not about what you do for someone else, but about feeling, sharing, emotions. Yes, I could fly you to the moon, but could I sit down, listen to what you're not saying, or sit with you in silence without feeling the need to do something? That's something I never learned. Love doesn't require you to build an empire or create a legacy. It requires you to know how to stop and be there, to give time, attention, and to be present when the other person needs you the most. But I was too focused on the grand movements in life, on proving myself, to realize that sometimes just being present is enough. I didn't realize that love doesn't need grand actions. It only needs sincerity in the smallest moments. If I could love again, I would learn to love not through movement, but through stillness. I would no longer chase the busyness of life, no longer use achievements to mask emotional deficiency. I would learn to love through presence, through simple conversations, and through moments that have no purpose other than being together. I made love complicated by thinking I needed to do everything grandly. But love, like everything else in life, sometimes is just understanding, listening, and sharing without needing to prove anything. I lived in a system where control was important. For most of my life, I built everything around me with one principle: control. Control every situation, every decision, every step. I thought that if I could control everything, I could control the outcome. There would be no mistakes. That's why I put all my energy into creating systems I could manage, companies I could lead, products I could create. But along the way, I forgot one important thing. Love is not something that can be controlled. Love, like the experiments I carried out with SpaceX and Tesla, is an adventure that cannot be predicted, and I wasn't prepared to face that. I always thought I could control everything around me: work, relationships, even my own emotions. But when love appeared, I found myself helpless. I couldn't control someone else's feelings. I couldn't point to a specific path for love. Love doesn't require me to solve problems. It requires me to learn how to accept and love without needing a reason. Over the years, I've lived a life where control was a survival factor. When I started working with Tesla and SpaceX, I understood that only control could create success. But when faced with love, I couldn't apply the same strategy. I couldn't control the emotions, the moments I had to face. I had lived in a world of logic where everything had to have a reason and a clear purpose. But love is not a problem that can be solved. It doesn't have a clear answer there. Is no exact step. Love is something you have to feel, not something you can control. And that's the reason I couldn't love properly. I spent too much time controlling everything, predicting outcomes, to the point where I overlooked one important factor: vulnerability. Love doesn't exist in a world of protection and control. It only lives in openness, acceptance, and freedom. When I realized this, I knew I needed to change. Control cannot be the center of every relationship. And I understand that true love only comes when you dare to let go, dare to live in uncertainty, and accept that you can't always control everything. If I could love again, I would not use control as a shield anymore. I would learn how to love without needing to predict every outcome, without needing to know how everything will unfold. Love is not a battle for control. It's a journey to go through the ups and downs together without worrying about controlling everything, Love doesn't require answers, it requires honesty. For a long time, I thought that love could solve every problem, just like I solved challenges at work. I believed that if I could find the right answer, if I could give a solution to every question, love would become easy. But in reality, that's not the case. Love doesn't require precise answers, perfect plans, or a clear strategy. It only requires one thing: honesty. Looking back, I realize I overlooked an important factor. I wasn't truly myself. Instead of facing difficult emotions, I tried to find ways to explain, to find logical answers to everything. I tried to solve everything instead of simply feeling. I lived in a world where everything needed to have a reason, and I used logic to hide emotions I couldn't explain. But love is not something that can be reasoned with. Love doesn't require you to have answers. It requires you to be honest, honest with your emotions, honest with the person you love. I thought love was a process that could be controlled, like the projects I had worked on. But the truth is, love can't be solved with ready-made formulas. I can't use logic to control emotions. I can't force myself to love the right way. I can't program my heart to respond in a certain way. I was wrong. Love is not something that can be calculated or planned. It is acceptance. It's opening your heart to accept yourself and others without needing a reason or answer. When I couldn't face the truth in love, I made everything more complicated. Instead of simply loving, I tried to explain love, analyze every moment, search for meaning in actions, in words. I got stuck in a loop of trying to understand everything. But in the process, I missed the essential truth. Love is not a problem you can solve. It's an emotion you must feel and live with. If I could love again, I wouldn't search for answers anymore. I wouldn't try to understand everything. I would simply stay in the moment, being honest with myself and the one I love. Love doesn't need explanations or logic. It only needs truth, presence, and an open heart. I didn't realize that before. I thought love had to have answers, a clear direction. But now I know that true love only needs honesty. It needs you to live in each moment without worrying about the unsolved questions. If I could love again, I wouldn't promise things I can't keep. That's something I've learned through years of constantly racing with work, building companies, solving countless technical issues. In the world I live in, everything can be measured, controlled, and the outcome can be predicted. However, love is not a project that can be planned precisely, and promises, especially those you can't keep, only complicate things. I promised many things I couldn't fulfill. I promised I would always be there, even though I couldn't be sure that would happen when life was full of surprises and challenges. I promised I would spend more time, even though work and other responsibilities had taken up all my time. Those promises, while appealing at first, only made love heavier when I couldn't keep them. The truth is, when you don't keep your promises, you not only hurt the other person, but you also deceive yourself about what you are truly capable of doing. Love doesn't need empty promises, grand commitments you can't fulfill. Love needs presence and consistency, not empty words. It needs you to be there in the simplest moments when things don't go as planned, when you're not the perfect version of yourself. I didn't understand this in the past. I thought that just promising to do everything, to be a better person, to spend more time with the one I loved would be enough. But after all, I realized that if I couldn't fulfill those promises, the sincerity in love would also be shaken. If I could love again, I wouldn't promise things I couldn't keep. I wouldn't promise that I would always be there, but I would always be there when needed. I wouldn't promise that I would never change, but I would promise that I would change, learn from my mistakes, and become a better person every day. Love is not about great promises or perfect things you can do for others. Love is about truth, consistency, and sincerity in every action you take. I used to think that perfection, great promises, were necessary to show love. But when you can't keep those promises, you only complicate everything. Love doesn't require you to do grand things. It requires you to do simple, consistent things. Instead of promising things I can't keep, I would live in a way that the person I love could trust. When I can maintain sincerity in my actions, that's when love can truly grow and endure. I lived a life that was too busy to love. For many years, I dedicated almost all my time and energy to big projects. I always thought that building companies, solving technological challenges, and working relentlessly were the most important things. I poured all my efforts into big dreams, into changing the world, into executing plans I believed would shape the future. But along that journey, I overlooked something I didn't realize at the time. Love can't wait forever. Love can't stand still in a world that's too busy. I had convinced myself that everything I did had a reason, that I was creating a solid foundation for the future, and that everything would stabilize once I completed the big tasks. But the reality was, while I was immersed in work, life kept going on. The important moments in love, the small conversations, the quiet moments of listening and sharing were overlooked. Love can't wait until you have free time. It needs to be nurtured in the present moments. I became so focused on providing for others that I forgot the most important thing. Love isn't something that can be built on work or accomplishments. Love needs time, it needs attention and care. But in my life, time was always scarce. I couldn't spend enough time with the one I loved because I always thought that work, career, and big projects would provide everything needed. I lived with the thought that someday, when everything was stable, I would have time for love. But looking back, I realized there's no such thing as a perfect someday. If you don't make time for love right now, you may lose the most important thing. My life had become a continuous cycle of work, important decisions, and challenges to overcome. But when love isn't a priority, it's easily forgotten. Unanswered messages, missed calls, quiet moments when you're not there, when someone needs you the most. These are the things I overlooked. I lived in a world where everything could be controlled, everything could be planned, but love isn't a project that can be scheduled. It's a connection, and this connection can only exist when you're willing to make time for it. If I could love again, I wouldn't let the busyness of life overshadow love anymore. I would learn to balance work and emotions. Love isn't something that can wait until you have enough time. It needs to be nurtured every day, every hour, and I won't let those opportunities slip away anymore. Love isn't something that can be delayed forever. When you truly make time for it, you'll realize that presence, even in the simplest moments, is the most precious gift. If I could love again, I would start by apologizing. I'm not someone who easily recognizes when I'm wrong, but looking back, I understand that there are things I did and things I didn't do that hurt the person I loved. Love isn't just about grand gestures, great plans, or spectacular actions. True love requires sincerity and understanding, and I lack those things. If I could go back, I would start by acknowledging my mistakes and apologizing for not being perceptive enough, not sensitive enough to recognize when the other person needed me. Throughout my life, I focused so much on great achievements, on changing the world, that I forgot love isn't a side part of life. It can't be pushed aside when I'm too busy with work. I loved in my own way by doing great projects, but I didn't realize that love doesn't need massive works. It needs presence, it needs care in the simplest moments, and I missed that. I didn't spend enough time truly understanding the person I loved, didn't listen to what she truly needed. Instead of understanding that true love isn't a series of measurable actions, I lived in a world where everything had to have results. Love isn't a project, it's not a job that needs to be completed. But I acted as though it was always needing to reach a final result, always needing to prove myself. I didn't realize that love truly grows in imperfection, in quiet moments. If I could love again, I wouldn't start with promises or plans. I would start by apologizing. Apologizing for not being there when needed, apologizing for not listening enough, and apologizing for not doing enough to keep love present. I would apologize for the times I couldn't accept my own vulnerability or that of others. Love doesn't require perfection. It needs you to be present and honest with yourself and with others. And I didn't do that. When I apologize, I'm not just talking about specific mistakes. I'm talking about the absence of presence, about the moments when I let the other person feel alone in a relationship. Love isn't something that can happen automatically. It needs care every day, and I didn't understand that until it was too late. If I could love again, I wouldn't let those mistakes linger. I would start by apologizing, and I would do it not just with words, but with actions. Love is not something you have, but something you build the ability to maintain. For many years, I lived with the belief that love was something you could hold on to, an emotion you could capture. I thought that if you could win love, You could own it, just like owning something in your hands. But that's not the case. Love is not an asset you can hold on to forever. It's a dynamic relationship, something you must continually nurture and develop. If not, it will fade, just like any system that isn't maintained. I viewed love as a goal to achieve a destination I needed to reach. But I didn't realize that love, like the companies or projects I built, cannot be sustained unless you put time and effort into taking care of it. When you don't make love a priority, when you don't invest in it as an important part of your life, it gradually becomes distant. Love is not something you can finish and then ignore. It requires continuous maintenance, presence in every moment, and a commitment that doesn't stop. I saw this when building Tesla and SpaceX. Success didn't come from having a perfect product the first time, but from continuous maintenance and improvement. Similarly, love is not a great moment you achieve. It's a journey, an ongoing process of understanding and acceptance, of working together to overcome challenges. If you want love to last, you must build the ability to sustain it, just like any system you create. You can't just put it in a corner and hope it will run itself. If I could love again, I wouldn't just try to win love. I would build it step by step, just like I build a business or a new technology. I wouldn't just love easily. I would learn to maintain that love through each challenge, each difficult moment. This requires patience, acceptance, and a commitment to continuously improve myself and the relationship. Love cannot exist if you don't work to maintain it. It's not something you can put in a showcase and admire from afar. It requires initiative, constant investment, and the willingness to face ongoing changes. It's a living relationship, and like all living things, it will change over time. If you don't work to adapt to those changes, you will lose the most precious thing. I've learned that love is not about possession, but about a connection you must maintain and protect every day. It's not something you can overlook or take for granted. Love requires persistence and commitment, and if you don't build the ability to sustain it, you will see it gradually drift away. Love, like everything important in life, is not something that can exist automatically. You must build and maintain it, day by day, hour by hour. If I could love again, I would build a life together. Love is not something you simply find or achieve. It's an ongoing process, a partnership that both people must contribute to. I once thought love was about finding the right person, someone who could go with me through everything, but I didn't realize that true love is a journey of building a life that two people create and develop together, step by step. Love is not a destination, it's a process you go through together. I spent too much time building big things, from massive companies to world-changing ideas. But love, like a great creation, cannot be built overnight. It requires time, patience, and continuous commitment. If I could love again, I wouldn't just look for a partner. I would create a life that we could live together, strive together, and grow together. Every day would be an opportunity for us to make life better, for us to develop not just as individuals, but as a couple, a true team working together. I was wrong to think that a career, big projects, were all I needed to bring happiness. Those things are important, but they cannot replace a companion, someone to share with you the joys, sorrows, and challenges of life. Love is not something you can put into a plan, nor can it be squeezed into busy schedules. Love is an inseparable part of life, and if I could do it again, I would build this life with the person I love, not just with goals or achievements. I don't want to continue living in a world where work and personal goals take up all my time. If I could love again, I would spend more time on simple moments, on conversations that don't need a purpose, on evenings just sitting together without a specific plan. I let big things take over everything, but now I understand that true happiness comes from the simplest things, from shared moments, from small decisions you make together. That's how love truly exists and grows. If I could love again, I would not let work or personal plans take over my life. I would build a life with the person I love, a life where we go through challenges together, a life with not just projects and trials, but with peaceful moments, understanding, and sharing. I would not let my career be an excuse to distance myself from love. I would make love a part of my life, not something pushed aside. Love is not something that can be completed or achieved. It's something you have to build together every day. And if I could love again, I would start building a life together, not just to exist, but to truly live.